Hi, I'm Jocelyn Hurley, and this is week 7 of making public law discussion-based videos. And this week's prompt is quite different from the rest of them. We have our midterm exam next Friday, and so the topic that we're discussing this week is that, what we've struggled so far in these 7 weeks when it comes to material and, coming up for the midterm. So what I've noticed is that, the two main things that I still, kind of mix up, I still don't really understand scrutiny. I understand the different levels of it. I'm just wondering when it's, applied. So I'm going to look more into that. Police power, I now understand it, but it took me a while. Because, originally I thought it was, the state governments regulate the police department, and they do. But police power is when the state government regulates the general welfare of the people, like health, safety, the economy, stuff like that, that makes, morale better. And it's interesting looking at, what that fine line is, whether or not they have too much control, or, oh, well, we're just, helping out the people. Another thing is remembering state powers versus federal powers, what they share and what they aren't allowed to have. I made a list of them, federal controls post office, coining money, making treaties, interstate commerce, naturalization of citizens, taxing imports/imports, immigration, emigration, and bankruptcy law. The states handle police and fire protection, police power, licensing, education, and regulating domestic relations, like marriage laws and the divorce process and stuff like that. Both of them handle taxation of citizens, chartering banks, roads, borrowing money, punishing crime, and then eminent domain. And then neither of them can have ex facto laws, which it took me a little bit to get this one too. It's basically someone does something, and at the time it's legal, and then a little bit while down the road it now is illegal, and the government's like, well, you did this illegal thing and we're gonna punish you for it. But when they did it, it was legal, so it can't count. Bills of attainder, that's when basically the government will arrest a person or a group of people and kind of eliminate due process, from what I understand. Correct me if I'm wrong. And obviously neither the state or federal government can encroach on civil liberties. I feel like that's a given. Another thing that's been just one to remember is all of the nuances, especially in Congress, and the process of bills becoming a law versus the process that amendments are added to the Constitution, because that's a whole different thing. And the qualifications to be in either House of Reps versus Senate, which I feel was learned in high school. So it's just you got to remember which one is which. Especially now with their control over agencies, quasi-legislative powers versus quasi-judicial powers, and the questions of separation of powers with those. Because there's a lot of red tape, especially in administrative agencies and the bureaucracy, and I feel that there's just a lot of nuances that the public doesn't really get a glimpse into. So looking at this course when we're really diving deep into these branches of government, just remembering all of the protocols, all the processes, is definitely something to wrap your mind around, because it's kind of crazy. Enumerated versus implied powers, for me, I just had to get them ingrained in my brain. Enumerated powers for the president, commander-in-chief, vetoing bills, treaties, appointments and pardons. And then implied powers, executive orders, bully pulpit, privileges, proclamations, and signing statements. For me, I always mix up proclamations and signing statements. Proclamations to me are basically less legit executive orders. And then signing statements are just, it's the president's interpretation of Congress's law, whether or not they agree with it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. Because it's their way of being like, yeah, I made this law, like I helped, or I don't like it, so here's why. I just think it's interesting, like, talking about squatters' rights and how, like, people in the government will just kind of accumulate powers, and, like, they've had it for so long that you really can't do anything about it. Like, the 30-day thing for squatters' rights, like, once they have this power for so long, no one's gonna do anything. So I think that's interesting, like, the implied powers for the president, like, how they get them and how they keep accumulating. So yeah, that's it for this week of public law.